This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Yep.
The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily match those of WPSL. However, we are the ones who've encouraged you all along to like and share them on social media and with all your friends and neighbors, because Joanne's Nutrition World in downtown Fort Pierce, US 1 at Orange Avenue, now presents Joanne's World of Nutrition with Joanne Seeger.
Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Thank you so much for spending some time with me this morning. I'm really excited about today's show, but I do want to mention that Dr. Ravi was going to come on with me, but then we decided we're going to do a different week with a different topic because my daughters insisted that I do a show. So I have my two girls, 12 and just about to be 13, that insisted on me doing a show about basic nutrition that they can show their friends, because they say at school everyone's very confused, Mommy, about what to eat and what not to eat. So I'm hoping that they can use this show to help their friends and any teachers that might want to listen in about the basics of nutrition. And as I was researching this topic, I was a little upset because there are so many videos that classify themselves of the basics of nutrition, but you can totally tell that they are funded by food groups.
Oh, yeah.
It's really obvious. So I hope you can listen to this with an open mind. And of course, if you're one of my listeners, you already have the intelligence to know the difference between food and products. But we will cover it today in real basic terms, so hopefully you will enjoy it. But we must do our breath work. We had to skip last week for Terry, which was totally understandable. But so any newbies listening,
But always continue breathing.
Yes, continue breathing. So we always start the show with some breath work. It's really important to do this each and every day. So we're going to do nasal breathing. I recommend that you do this all throughout the show, not just the 3 times that we do it to start the show. So we're going to breathe in through our nose for 5. We're going to hold for 5, and we're going to exhale for 5, okay?
Yeah.
So any newbies, please join. You'll feel better right after, and we'll do 3 sessions.
Okay.
All right, so let's exhale out any unsteadiness we feel in our body,
Any unbalance.
nervousness, any tension,
Okay.
just anywhere your mind is racing on your today's to-do list,
Let it all out with your nostrils. Exit
Okay.
air. Now breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5. Release slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again. 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5. Release. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more in. 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5. And release slowly. 2, 3, 4, 5.
Thank
Feel
you
better,
very
huh?
much. Wow, that went fast.
That felt good.
I love doing that. I hope you all did too. And for any of my listeners that joined us last week for Terry's lecture, it was a huge success. We
Was it a
really,
good crowd?
a great crowd. We got kicked out by the library. It was like that party you didn't want to be
Let me
ended.
guess. Were you too loud?
So no, they closed and they were like, "Okay, really, you gotta leave."
We want to go home.
But it was just real. I thank the library because it was a beautiful space. There were a lot of people that were like, well, let's just take it outside. We'll stand, He's a great speaker. I would say you can tell he speaks with passion. He's just an educator. I just love him. Just great intentions, great passion.
Did you see
So
the video
thank
on
you for
YouTube?
everyone that attended.
see
No,
Okay.
I didn't.
The picture of Terry Libron that we used had a transparent background. That means I could superimpose it right next to you on the set.
Oh my
It
gosh,
looked
I
like
have
he's
to
sitting
check
right
it out.
there, and at one time he scoots over to the other side.
Oh, that
and
is
then
so
scoots
funny.
back across really close to you.
All right, I definitely have
so
to
y'all
check it
were-
out
yeah.
on YouTube.
It's
Okay,
cool.
wonderful. So yes, if you go to YouTube and just check out last week's date, you'll see Terry. Obviously, Cliff did a great job, and listen to his basics. So he's such a great guy, and we will definitely try to get him back in for another lecture. Might not happen for another year, but I'll keep trying. All right, so nutrition basics. So there was a point in our government that they always use the pyramid, the food pyramid, to
The upside down
help,
food pyramid, yeah.
right, to help people understand what to eat. It was so outdated, incorrect, just really bad, really bad.
It was
So
made-
then
It was made during a time when people would get out in the field and work hard all day, every day, and have
Yeah,
to eat big meals.
I don't know. Can you remember that time? I don't think that's in our timeline
I remember
when
having
we were
some
out in the
cousins
fields.
up the farm, the kids, the cousins up.
I
up
know
the
my
farm,
parents
yeah.
never worked a farm, but yeah,
Oh.
there's maybe some of our local folk in Okeechobee and stuff. But I would definitely say that as bad and outdated as the food pyramid was, now we have My Plate. And My Plate is basically a picture of a plate. And so you can go to myplate.gov if you want to follow along this thinking as I discuss it. It's a plate, just a normal sized dinner plate, not the buffet ones that are like 4 times too big. And it has a circle image with cut into 4 that shows fruits on the top left, then vegetables below that, grains on the other corner, and then protein the bottom corner, and then this little, it almost looks like a cup circle size attached to that plate that says dairy. So now there is about 10% redeeming quality for their new one. So I'm going to cover what really they were forced to do, because you could tell we were so sick as a society and a country that they really had to change something. But you can tell so obviously that they are being funded by the huge, trillion-dollar industries when they use their language. And if you follow any dietitians that was schooled in old school thinking, you will hear them say those type of things. All carbs are created equal, calories are calories, moderation, balance, all these type of words that have gotten us pretty sick as a country. So let's start with fruit. Okay, so one of the things that bothers me the most about My Plate is that it treats all fruit equally, especially fruit juice. Now, fruit juice, there's no good about fruit juice. It should never be discussed when a parent or a mother that's about to give birth is taught by the system what's good for her and her child. Fruit juice is a product. It is not a food. It is a product that is created not only from basically the sugar of the fruit, but there's sometimes not even real fruit in the juice. So to be clear, even though it says that some of your fruit servings can be obtained through fruit juice, that is completely incorrect. Fruit juice has no healthy place in anyone's diet, especially a child's. So I have a lot of moms that will say, and again, I really feel upset that these moms have the best intentions for themselves and their children. They are not trying to hurt their children, but they are being told in the system that they gave birth in that the fruit juice is fine. But what they'll say to cover themselves, well, you can just dilute it in the bottles. So there are so many moms that I speak to that will say, oh, Joanne, don't worry. I just took a little bit of the apple juice and then I put lots of water in the bottle to make up for it. Well, if you're removing that sugar from the fruit, you're also removing all the nutrients, the polyphenols, and especially the fiber. Okay? So now they are just getting glucose, and it doesn't matter that it's diluted by water. It's still just pure fructose or glucose, whatever, depending on the manufacturer. So really, please, again, dilution does not matter when it comes to fruit juice. There's no healthy juice. Now, I have my other customers that are very aware of health, and they will say, well, what about if I juice it for my kids? Now, I have a Champion juicer, and I've owned probably 7 other juicers. I love juicing. But what I was taught, if it's sweet, it's not good for you. And it holds true if you think about it. If we eat one apple, the apples that were grown, a good 20, 30 years ago, they're small, sometimes even a little bitter, and they're a perfect serving. So when we eat it with the skin intact, all the chewing to get it down, all the fiber in the skins, basically give us such a great nutrient fill and fiber filling of our bodies that we would never sit down and eat 10 apples. It's just usually unheard of. So when you do juice, and it doesn't matter if you're doing it through your fancy juicer, okay, and I've made this mistake before. For my kids, I was like, well, I'll just juice the juice myself that way. But as I'm juicing, I see that juicer taking all that pulp out, taking all that fiber out, and all that goodness is just plopped on the side of the juicer. And I'm like, this does not seem right. and then of course the kids love it because what's left is the sweetness. So common sense tells us that nature had it perfect. Okay, it absolutely had it perfect when it comes to fruit. Old school fruit, high fiber, lots of polyphenol, lots of nutrients, lots of vitamin C, and just enough sweetness so we enjoy it. But that is not the fruit we're eating now. The apples are the best examples of how our fruit has changed. So if you think, and you can still sometimes see them at a farmer's market, or if you go apple picking and you see an orchard that has not been treated with GMOs or hybrids, you can see small little bitter apples. So the apples are much smaller than what you see in the supermarket, and they are not as sweet. And that is just an example of how the servings have changed based on what Americans are demanding, larger, more perfect, and sweeter. So really keep in mind, if you still have access, if you're one of the lucky ones that still have access to the way fruit is intentionally grown many years ago, then have at it. But as soon as you make it into juice, even in your own juicer, you've lost a lot. Not worth intaking. So the fruit category really has to be looked at objectively. The other point I want to make is that fruit that's organic, especially the healthiest ones like the berries, the blueberries, the raspberries, the blackberries, that is what I always suggest eating, can get very expensive. I think the little containers now are $7 unless you get lucky and get them on sale. So frozen fruit, especially organic, is a great idea because when they do berries, because of their perishability, they flash freeze them. So if you get frozen berries or frozen organic fruit, much better idea sometimes, and sometimes more economical to use for the family than the fresh fruit. So keep in mind, if it's flash frozen, sometimes it's actually a higher nutrient content than fresh because there are produce delivery services that sometimes they will gas the produce on the way to the destination, so that way they don't have to worry about perishability. So that can involve chemicals and other, let's call them preservatives, so that way they look perfect for you in the market, because no one's going to spend $7 on a container of berries if it's mushy and doesn't look fresh and perfect. So keep that in mind. Sometimes frozen is a good idea, especially when it comes to organic berries and fruit. So that should now, in my plate, it shows that as being a quarter of the plate. My suggestion is to cut that quarter in half, okay? And then the bottom of that side of the plate says vegetables. So I would have vegetables just creep up and kind of take over half of that fruit space for a more accurate, healthy day. It's very difficult right now to get anyone, especially children, to eat enough vegetables. But I want to start by saying, and no one that I know of has talked about this, but potatoes, corn, and peas, and they usually classify it as white potatoes, but just so you know, I still advocate sweet potatoes, but not if you're going to always use a sweet potato instead of other vegetables, okay? So sweet potato in adjunct to using all the other vegetables is fine, but not if that's going to be your daily vegetable. Because what I was just about to mention is potatoes, corn, and peas are not classified as vegetables anymore. They are just starch. We have genetically modified them to the point, and especially the peas. Now, I know when my children were young, they always loved peas. Why? They're nice and starchy and a little bit of sweetness. So therefore, they got lumped into the corn and potato realm, so that way people are clear that when you're supposed to be eating all these servings of vegetables a day, that it does not include potatoes, corn, and peas. No one is talking about this, but it makes sense. We eat enough starch and refined carbohydrates. We definitely don't need it to be in the vegetable category. Okay, so with vegetables, I always suggest organic if possible. Use your local farmers market. Really try to support any of your neighbors that are doing a home garden, a community garden, a city garden. Get involved. Really try to support them. It's hard work. I know friends that have gotten certified through the organic system, and it is tough. Some people will kind of roll their eyes and say, oh, I don't know if I can trust organic. If anyone is putting their livelihood into a career of organic farming, it is a lot of time, a lot of heartache, a lot of money, a lot of work. So please give them some consideration. The more people that buy their produce and support them, then they can get into different crops, and it just benefit the whole community. Less chemicals, fertilizers, pesticides, especially glyphosate and Roundup, which is in now 163 different fertilizers and weed killers, is a great idea for your neighborhood, your water system. Remember, it all trickles down to our water, our rain supply. So you really want to support anyone that's trying to do organic. And if you have a green thumb, I definitely do not. There are so many YouTube videos and systems that you can buy for indoors or outdoors to even grow your own greens, if you do notice that the vegetables are getting more expensive. Okay, so vegetables, I'm not going to give any rules for this because honestly, if you're eating vegetables, I am thrilled. I know how tough it is, but kids usually love the ones, I hate to say it, that they dip in ranch dressing, but start there. Start somewhere with your kids. So if they're not used to vegetables, they usually love the cut up carrots, celery, cucumbers with a little dip. There's a million recipes online how to make chemical-free, healthy versions of ranch dressing. So just start there. You don't have to introduce them to an arugula salad that's all bitter with lots of, leafy greens. But any vegetables is a good amount of vegetables, but really strive for almost half your plate to be vegetables, okay? So protein. I'm saving grains for last because that's a long conversation. So protein. Protein, as you well know, is mostly animal products. There are vegan sources of protein. So let's first talk about soy. Soy has been vilified because of genetically modified organisms, and rightly so. When I went to school, we did use a lot of soy products, but it was never a GMO soy product, and it was usually a fermented soy product. So traditionally, all the studies that use soy in a healthy way and had amazing health benefits, for instance, with the tofu, it was like an eighth of a cube. So if you go to the supermarket and you buy a cube of tofu, a serving that, say, in Japan, where they always reference how soy improved their health, it was like an eighth of that block diced up in a fermented miso soup with seaweed, nutrients. It wasn't like they were taking these huge blocks, frying them, and just woofing them down without the balance of fermentation and vegetables. So you always have to listen to the whole story, not just the headline that they want you to read. The other part of it is they use lots of fermented tofu products. For instance, one is called Tempeh. Tempeh is my favorite. It's an acquired taste, but definitely worth trying. And all the supermarkets are selling it now, not just the health food stores. So Tempeh is fermented tofu. It stays really stable for a while in the refrigerator, so great to use. And I love mixing it with a little fermented cabbage, sauerkraut. It's absolutely delicious. Okay, edamame in moderation, a little bit on top of a salad or with your stir fry. That's a great idea. But tofu, soy products, especially now that they're so genetically modified, were never meant to be in excess in shakes and in bars and in replacement meal drinks. Like, please don't use them that way. That is not a healthy way, and it was never intended to be used that way. So beans, different beans, so not soy, can also be used, but they are a starch. So they do have protein, but there is a lot of starch. And if you are trying to switch over from a starch-based high-carb diet to start becoming healthier, beans will make it very difficult to transition to a lower carb, healthier diet because they are so much starch. So if you are not a vegan and you are buying animal foods, then I would suggest that you look for, if you're in the beef market, you want to do grass-fed and grass-finished. Yes, it's more expensive for sure, and again, support your local cattle ranchers if you have them. We are so blessed here in the Treasure Coast that we have local ranchers that use these measures for their cattle, and in doing so, they're not fattening up the cows. I went to a store the other day, and it really looked like they were super proud. There was like this sticker on all the meat packages that I thought said grass-fed. But as soon as I got my glasses out and I read more clearly, it said grain-fed, okay? So the cattle are meant to eat the grass, but they're kind of trying to trick us because they will say, but the grain-fed cattle is more fattier, more juicier. And there is some truth to that. But again, when they are eating something other than grass, their meat turns from what is high in omega-3, super healthy for us, to an omega-6 product, which we have way too much of, almost 79 times too much of it versus omega-3. So you want to choose your meat carefully. And if you're worried about expense, most of us eat too much of our protein. So if you really look at a protein serving size, which is like a deck of cards, then you'll stay in budget because you'll consume just a couple servings of that right portion, and then you'll save the expense there. So, you can prepare your beef and then save the rest in the fridge or the freezer, and you'll save the cost there. We definitely consume way too much protein. So you want to choose the right protein and the right portion size. If you're buying poultry, There was a real big myth going around that poultry was better, but our poor chickens are being mass produced, and I could go on for probably 3 hours about how they're raised more as an industry versus the way they were properly raised before. So please, again, support local. Make sure if you choose to eat chicken that the chicken is treated properly. And a big trick the industry is using with chicken is it will say no hormones added. And then you have to look now for that there's no hormones in their feed. So yes, they might not be injecting the chickens, but they could also be putting the antibiotics or hormones in the feed themselves. So there is so much great information online about that, where you can find the companies that do make the right choices. So that way, when you're eating the poultry, which another real way to tell is the size of the poultry. If you look at a real small breast of a chicken, then you're in the right place. If it looks huge and full and juicy, usually not the right chicken. Okay, the chickens now are like 4 times the size they were meant to be. So stick to the ones that are small, raised properly, and again, the more money you give to the people that are doing it the right way, the prices will equal out and come down a bit. They just need more consumers making the better choices, and then it'll help all of us. So definitely with poultry. Eggs, definitely getting easier to get clean eggs. I see them everywhere now, even the big box stores. So you want to research eggs to make sure that they're not in a coop with one tiny little door for 3,000, laying hens. You want to make sure that the chickens that are laying the eggs have access to fresh air. They're not strapped into any cages, and that they are not being fed antibiotics, hormones, or any of that junk. So really the eggs are the easiest thing to get. So sometimes with a client, I will tell them, instead of eating poultry right now, can you just eat the egg? Sometimes the feedback, which I'm going to go into for the next category, is but an egg has a yolk. The yolk has fat and cholesterol, which is the major nutrient the brain needs and all the cells. So please enjoy it. It's not true that the egg yolk is unhealthy. Completely not true. So do not be afraid of an egg yolk. So that is the protein. Oh, and fish. I covered this on a few shows, and the fish has to be wild. Wild fish, line-caught fish, is very expensive right now. I am understanding why they started farm-raised fish. The intention was to make more fish available to the consumers and for a more reasonable price. I totally understand that. But it compromises our health, just like with beef being omega-6. If the fish is not in its natural habitat or eating its natural source of fuel, then the composition of the meat flesh will change, and that will not benefit us, and it will hurt us. So again, I understand the intention of the farm-raised fish, and it's when I buy fish now, wild-caught fish, it's like $30 a piece. So instead of a few times a week, it might be 1 time a week. But I would still rather eat 1 clean piece of fish a week versus a farm-raised fish that I don't really know what kind of pellets it ate, what chemicals it consumed, and what it's swimming in. And some of the pictures I've seen, not much better when how the chicken coops look.
The amino acids in the fish are in the cold water fish.
Yeah, so cold water, line caught, wild fish. Again, hard to get, but definitely the better stuff. When we come back, we're gonna go into the fats and dairy little group there, and so much more about nutrition basics coming up. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hi, Hi, this is Joanne from Nutrition World and Wellness Center. I am really excited to introduce new guests and topics to my show every Thursday morning at 10 a.m. here on WPSL, where my listeners can call in on any topic. If I don't know the answer, I'll try to find it. We want to help you become the best version of yourself. We will have chiropractors, naturopaths, coaches, and of course, Dr. Ravi will be on every month as usual. I am looking forward to sharing my 30 years of experience with my listeners so we can enjoy this life journey together.
Visit Joanne's Nutrition World in the Kras Square, formerly known as the Arcade Building, located at US 1 and Orange Avenue, across from Fort Pierce City Hall. Open Monday through Friday from 10 to 4, Saturdays 10 to 3. Taking appointments for the Wellness Center online at joannesnutritionworld.com or call 772-464-3598.
Hey, it's Dr. Ravi at Tradition Family Chiropractic. We are dedicated to serving you and your family with integrity, compassion, and innovative care through the most advanced chiropractic care ever in chiropractic history, encouraging your health and your family's health to its maximum potential on a regular basis. Call us today at 772-345-0060 or schedule online at traditionhealth.com for your free consultation.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Welcome back to Joanne's World of Nutrition, brought to you by Nutrition World in downtown Fort Pierce, US 1 at Orange Avenue, across from City Hall, in the Kras Plaza or Square?
Kras Square. Do you know, I always forget too. I've been there for years, and I always go, wait, Kras Center?
I just
Kras?
want to say...
Well, because there are downtown. There's centers, and there's squares, and there's corners, and there's, yes.
Yeah, but that was the old arcade building. That was sort of like maybe
I
the
still
first
say
mall.
old arcade building. I still say it.
That's
I
what the
can't
first
help
malls looked like in
it.
Florida. Yeah.
But it's Kras Square.
Okay, Square.
So
okay.
I always say right next to Potbelly Deli.
Oh, yeah.
Love those people.
Oh, yeah.
All right, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the show. We're just kind of going over nutrition basics, and I'm using the reference to what the government has, myplate.gov. I really hope they had the best intentions, but they were really way off on some of their information. It seems to me, maybe I'm wrong, that you can tell that there's industry-funded information. When I went to school, I tell this story all the time, that one of my teachers put up a picture of a Snickers bar and a salad and asked which one is better. And again, I went to school a long time ago. And I was like so proud to know the answer. Obviously, I'm picking salad. And she said, no, they're the same calorically, and the fiber and the protein and the fats, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know what salad was on that picture, but definitely none that would equal the nutrition of a Snickers bar, which is, basically poisoning yourself. So I definitely made it my mission for all these years after to really talk to people, learn what's working, the common sense of nutrition, and I hope you can do that too. We have been pretty much impacted since we were born with pictures that the dairy industry funded. Cereal companies spent $29 million to try to convince us that fat was bad. So no one spends that kind of money, unless they really want the whole shift of people to go in a bad direction. And that's what happened. Heart disease killing us, number one, cancer. So we really do need to think for ourselves and think outside the box. So the next category is dairy. So the dairy, I don't know what they were thinking. They put it as this little cup-sized circle on the outside of the plate. But in the dairy, it was almost like they had to, or else they wouldn't be funded. Honestly, that's how I feel like this little circle means, because in the circle, the recommended dairy is skim milk, non-fat yogurt, low-fat cheese, And we have learned for many years now that in nature, no cheese milk products come out like that. There's no such thing as skim milk out of a cow or, no fat this, or it's just not natural in nature. But I do believe that they were trying to protect themselves, like, okay, we won't worry about the sugar or the milk sugars, because remember, milk has sugars in it and casein, really difficult things for the body to digest.
Wow.
It
Lactose
does
intolerant
not
people.
do a body good, and it does not serve any benefits. So the only thing I can think why that stole a space and not fat is that it was funded. If I'm wrong, please prove me wrong, because I can't figure out any reason dairy would be
Usually,
there.
if you follow the money, that is
Yes.
where the clues point.
Yes,
yeah.
we consume so much processed dairy, so I'm going to call it a product, not a food, and we have the highest osteoporosis. I mean, our bones are not doing so great here. So again, making no sense to me. So let me just say, let's pretend that little circle is fats, and that's going to come over to where the grain section is, okay? So if you happen to be following along, the grains have a quarter of the plate. Let's just switch it and make fats where the grains are, okay? And in that, fats really, a lot of people will say healthy fats now, but it's so confusing what's a healthy fat. Sometimes people imagine that they mean healthy fat means one that's not animal source, but that's not true. What they mean by healthy fats is not a product from fat. It's not processed, which are the oils. So just like I mentioned with fruit, there's a huge difference between apple juice or orange juice from the original fruit that had so much nutrition. Now, if you eat a few sunflower seeds, you eat anything in nature that has fat, you are getting it bound up, properly structured with nutrients and compounds that heal the body. The brain needs those fats, those cells. Every cell needs that fat. Your hormones, critical to have the fat. Nerve endings, the sheath of your nerves to communicate. We have no idea all the amazing things that fats do, but trust me, none of them is to clog up your arteries. Okay? So healthy fats are ones that are not man-made, not processed, not in an oil bottle. So if your oil bottle promises all these things, it's processed. It's not good. If you take, like I used to buy raw nuts for the store, lots of great healthy fats in the raw nuts, and a package wouldn't be cheap. I mean, a thing of, say, macadamia nuts might be $12 to $15 for a small little container. I knew if I didn't sell them or consume them quick, they would go rancid. And then, boom, there goes the money. So if you think of it that way, think of how long those oil bottles stay on those supermarket shelves. How long do we keep them in our cabinets for next year's cooking or the sautéing or the baking? Right? Does this give you an idea of how it's processed? It's a product. It's no longer a food. So yes, if you eat macadamia nuts, pistachios, pecans, avocados, olives, coconut, phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal and healthy for the body. The egg yolk, like I mentioned, it is in the protein category, not in the dairy category. Okay, that's old school. It is a protein, but it has a tremendous amount of choline for the brain and healthy fats. So healthy fats in nature do oxidize and go rancid very quickly, and that's a true test to see that you're eating it properly. And even though I'm giving it that whole quarter space, fats are very concentrated, so you don't need a huge amount to cover that percentage of the plate. So like a half an avocado sliced up, a few macadamians maybe crushed up, some pine nuts on top of your salad greens. or a couple tablespoons of olive oil on as dressing or on top of your protein source as a marinade. That is really all you need. So where there's no room for fats and they're allowing this still in my plate is fried fats. So any type of fat, especially if it's combined with sugar, which I'm going to cover next, is so dangerous to the human body. So if you put fat and sugar together, something completely unnatural to the body, something that there's no room for. I'll use the donut as the example. Really, really bad. And the fact that some of us are still starting our day with it after fasting all night and trying to fix what was broken and expect a good result with starting with a donut. Really be very, very careful, okay? So we just got, well, I didn't. My son and Shelby just got an air fryer as a gift. I got to tell you, if you are really hooked on fried foods, you might want to check these things out. You do get that crispiness, a little crunch, without dunking it into very toxic, poisonous oil, okay? So again, so let's just take the dairy out of the equation and put the fats into the grain spot. And if you're really loving dairy foods, I'll give you a few rules. Go to companies, just like I mentioned, when you're trying to source out clean vegetables and protein, do the same consideration for dairy. Go to the companies that are really stepping out of the box and making sure that they're not using any of the dangerous casein, that they're not using any of the chemicals, the hormones, the antibiotics. There are some companies inside the United States, but a lot of the imported ones do have stricter rules than we do for our dairy foods. So I usually start there. Brie is a good example. Sheep yogurt, sheep milk, sheep cheese, goat cheese. So, but again, the trend is going to buying those things, and as soon as more consumers start buying it, sometimes they cut corners. So always read the packaging. If they have an amazing story to tell, which says how hard they're working to give you the best quality food, not product, then they're going to tell you on their label. So just please make sure you see it. Don't just assume that every piece of feta is, goat or sheep. It could still be cow's milk made here. So please read the packaging very well. Okay, so the best for last grains.
Swiss chard, colors.
No, not greens, grains.
Grains.
So you mentioned my favorite things. That's a vegetable, super healthy. Unfortunately, not what most people go towards when they're eating their vegetables. But for grains, let's really be clear here. And this is where our addictive personalities get super defensive. So if I still have your attention and you're not ready to throw in the towel, take a deep breath, okay? This is not about what diet plan you're on, whether it be keto, paleo. That doesn't matter. What I'm trying to get across to not only the young children that might listen to this, but all us adults, is that refined grains, okay? And that's why I believe they couldn't call it the carbohydrate category anymore. They called it grains because processed grains are not food. It's not a food category. It's a product category. Cereals, granola bars, crackers, all that processed chemicalized food is not food. It's a product.
Should we be grass-fed like the cattle?
Yeah, right? So, well, that would be good. But so that is really what you have to look at. I am not telling you to eliminate a food category. I am telling you to eliminate food products. Products that are intended to stay on grocery shelves indefinitely. They have so many chemicals in them that they not only don't give you any nutrition, but they will poison the body. So very dangerous is that product category, okay? So if you look at grains, that would be things like brown rice, whole grain wheat berries. Has anyone seen wheat berries? They look
Steel-cut
nothing like steel-cut oats, right? Or some people like, in the Irish steel-cut oats, they know those tin mills. So you want to look at a whole grain. But here is the issue. Companies have, since My Plate came out, and there's a paragraph under the grain category that says in order to be part of a healthy diet, it has to contain at least half of a whole grain or, and this is where you have to read carefully, or enriched. So they basically can legally still destroy the grain, take out anything that matters, the fiber, the nutrients. So there are all these layers on these beautiful grains that contain what was valuable. But those things go bad really fast, okay? If you ever cooked a whole grain in your house, you know even in the fridge, the composition will change within a week. It gets a little slimy, not so great anymore. You got to throw it away because it has so much healthy fat, protein, moisture, nutrients that it will break down like anything in nature does. So they basically get around it, especially the cereal companies, by saying, oh, with added whole grains. So they might throw in a tiny sprinkle to get you to buy it or make it look more attractive. But it's still enriched with synthetic nutrients that don't do anything for the body. And it's very, very dangerous. So there is a lot of people in the low carb industry too that is taking advantage of the system as well, using synthetic sources of fiber. Because remember, in nature, there is so much fiber, and as a country, we do not eat enough fiber. We're supposed to be consuming 30 to 35 grams of fiber a day. Why is that critical? Because the beginning part of your small intestine, called the duodenum, I think that's the coolest word ever. If it senses you're intaking a carbohydrate of any source, but it's with lots of fiber, it literally does not send the same signal to the pancreas, the cells in the pancreas, to say you're about to be burdened. You got to really send a lot of insulin out, because the fiber matrix slows down that release of all the glucose molecules that are in there nice and slowly through this very intentional long intestinal system. Our intestinal system's huge. Why would we have such a huge intestinal system? So that way we can break down the fibers, break down the nutrients, deliver what needs to be delivered into the body and utilize properly. We were not intended to have in our mouth that instant flour. Even when some people argue with me this, not all the time. Actually, I've only had maybe a handful of people in my experience, because most people, it's common sense. They say, well, what about biblically the bread? It was used for so long, and bread was the substance of a lot of societies. If you go back and study the history of the mill, they used to take the wheat berry or the rye or whatever grain it was, and they would just use like a stone ground mill, not a mechanical mill, not a steel mill, and they would just grind it just enough to break that outer layer to make it where they could do a stone ground bread. So if you ever have eaten a real stone ground bread versus what's in our supermarket, there's no it's not even close to being the same bread. And again, a stone ground bread is going to go bad on your kitchen counter in a couple days, where what we're creating, even if we have our bread makers at home, is not that. When in the 1800s, when they changed from a hand mill where someone was actually using stone to these mechanical steel mills to make our grains into flour, They removed everything. And that's why by law, 100 years later, they said, wait, you got to start enriching it. Our citizens are getting sick. They're getting issues because there's no nutrients left in our bread anymore. So if you follow the history, it all makes sense. So I'm not arguing about the bread that used to be around during the biblical times. I am arguing what we're eating now. It's just not the same. And we're definitely, we're not really letting our intestines get the fiber it needs and the nutrients it needs for the healthiest plan. Now, I only have a couple minutes left, so as usual, I'm running out of time.
Part two next week if necessary.
I always worry that I won't have enough info and then I end up running out. So I do have to talk about portion size. If you follow the history in the United States and portion size, it's crazy how big our portions have gotten. It was all over the news when it came to drinks. I think New York City made it famous as far as portion size. But really, you have to think about this for yourself. Just like I mentioned, those little apples used to be a full apple, right? Same thing with muffins, bagels. The local bagel place by my house now makes mini bagels. Now, no one orders them. No one orders the mini bagels. They all order the large bagels. The mini bagel is a portion size. Now, it's still refined flour, still starch, still not great. But keep in mind, we're still eating those large bagels that are 4 times the serving size. Cereal, which is not a food, it's a product, okay? I don't care what the label says as far as whole grains, fiber, blah, blah, blah. That's a perfect example. You bring home this high fiber brand cereal, trying to do the best for yourself and your family. But those bowls that we put that cereal in, a serving size is tiny. Tiny. Most people do 4 times the serving size of that. So my husband always jokes at the store about the words moderation, balance. We are really out of balance, especially with the portion size. So just if you refuse to give up the cereal and the refined carbohydrates, you're just totally addicted. And I know the addiction to those. It's hard. But I can help you through it. It's a tough battle, but we can put real balance back into your day. But just try measuring for 1 week. Measure all those processed carbohydrates that you're eating so you can see where you're really at. And if the government says 9 servings of vegetables a day, see where you're at with that. So don't worry about being classified as keto, paleo, high carb, low carb. Just try to get as much nutrients in and just appreciate your body and what it can do. All right, everyone. Hope I didn't scare anyone away. Have an awesome week and call us anytime. We're here to help. Have the greatest week ever. Bye-bye.
Joanne's World of Nutrition, Thursdays on WPSL, Port St. Lucie.